we have to move on to discuss the Jets firing GM Joe Douglas. Now, the Jets' experience has been absolutely devastating this season. They fired Robert Saleh earlier this year after that loss to Minnesota, which dropped them to 2-3, and they were looking for immediate answers. And since that firing, they have improved so much that they are 3-8 now. So they went since then 1-6, 1-5, 1-5, yeah, 1-5. Their one lone win coming against a Texans team that I spoke a little bit about in the first segment. They're not that great of a football team, but yeah, the Jets are the Jets, and despite signing Aaron Rodgers, the Jets controller, the Jets culture, is undefeated, and they've been a losing team for the entirety of my football watching life. I have to say I wasn't really around. I was around, but I wasn't really cognitive enough to understand what was going on during the Rex Ryan era. So I've never seen the Jets be a good football team. They had that 1 year with Fitzpatrick where I believe they finished 10-6, but they missed the playoffs. When they lost to Buffalo in Week 17, it's been horrible, and you finally end up getting Aaron Rodgers back, and as you get Aaron Rodgers back, suddenly your defense drops from being, a top 3 defense into the league to, pretty pedestrian. I'd probably rank them in like the 10 to 15 range, if not even lower. They're nowhere near the greatness of some of the Jets defenses teams we've seen in the past couple of years. The main issue with those couple of teams is that, Zach Wilson was their starter for the first season and for both seasons essentially. Aaron Rodgers got hurt the first couple of plays in the first game. But you had Zach Wilson at quarterback, and how elite you play defensively, you're not getting that many results. Now, Aaron Rodgers, I really don't think he's been terrible this season. Now, obviously, there's been some throws that he's left out there that he's made in the past, and he's become a little bit more turnover frequent in the past. But I don't see much decrease in arm velocity, arm accuracy, even pocket presence, and his mobility. I don't see it that much worse. I just see a dude that's uncomfortable in the environment he's in and don't have much cohesion with the wide receivers, period. And another devastating part about this, if you're a Jets fan, is that you've also brought in Devontae Adams, and they're looking the way that they've looked so far this season. Yeah, I don't know. I really, as a Jets fan, I really do not know where to go. Obviously, this season now is a bust, and you try to rack up whatever you can and out of the season and move on. But you're going forward. You have Rodgers for another year at least. You have a team that's missing now general manager who. Joe Douglas, by the way, that was the main topic of the segment, is that the fact Joe Douglas was fired. But you fired Joe Douglas, you fired Robert Saleh, but when it's time to fire Woody Johnson, who's been coaching these GMs and head coaches over and over again, and he's continuously has got it wrong. When is the time for the New York Jets fans to rise up, to go and protest the streets, demanding Woody Johnson sells the team, as European fans would do in Europe. European soccer fans will do in Europe. You see with the Glazers ownership group at United, who also, by the way, own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and certain other groups that run their clubs really poorly. The fans have, they're not afraid to say something about it. Where is that in the American culture? And I think Joe Douglas overall has done a good job building that defense. I think offensively, A lot of people said before the season, this is Aaron Rodgers' most talented team that he's had in his career. Well, guess what? I mean, this is a really talented football team, and Joe Douglas has a lot to do with that. You know, and now I think there's been questionable decision making had in his tenure. But when it comes to this team, is this seriously the general manager that you are supposed to blame for this, or is it just the fact that this team just has a losing mentality, losing culture, and are pretty unlucky too? There's an unlucky element to it as well. And yeah, I don't know what I don't know where the Jets go from here. You're obviously tied with um, you're obviously tied with Aaron Rodgers now for uh, for a pretty long time, and or not a long time, but for another year. But again, he's a 40-year-old quarterback, and you're reeling right now. Is it full on rebuild mode when you're firing your head coach, when you're firing your general manager? It's almost setting up a rebuild. It's almost admitting the failures of this Aaron Rodgers trade. They've compounded that failure by also adding in another failure trade of getting Devontae Adams, which doesn't cost nearly as much, but is still assets lost to make that acquisition happen. And by the way, I feel for Devontae Adams. He's left Green Bay, to try to play with his best friend Derek Carr. Derek Carr ended up getting traded away. He tries to go back to Aaron Rodgers to try to kind of recapture that old glory that he had with the Packers. And guess what? They're even worse than they're just as bad as the Raiders. And this I firmly believe players like Devontae Adams, players like Keenan Allen, I think they deserve a lot more from the production that they've had and the consistent levels that they've had in their careers. They deserve a lot more in terms of, actually, Devontae Adams has played in quite amount of big games, but he hasn't played in the game. And Keenan Allen, he's played in very few big games, and I think he's one of the most underrated receivers in the history of football. And and yeah, it's just unfortunate for Devontae Adams. It's unfortunate for Robert Saleh as well. I think he's been part of this unlucky group of occurrences to happen with the Jets, and yeah, it's a mess. And they can fire Joe Douglas all they want. The real issue with this New York Giants team won't go until this owner decides to either sell the football team or take his head out of where the sun doesn't shine and bring in proper football aficionados to manage completely the sporting side of the game, and he can just sit there and collect the paycheck like what most owners are good for. Because these owners, they're not football men. I know, you look at Jerry Jones, and he did play the occasional college football, but these owners, they got rich off of their businesses or oil or something of that sort. They, in terms of being able to make football decisions, not the most brightest. And I think Woody Allen's a perfect example of that.